lockdown. No, not a show I watch on Nat Geo. It's my day-to-day life. So on this video, let's talk about the worldwide COVID-19 pandemic. And I'm going to give you some of my experiences, my tips, and also what has been the biggest challenges as an autistic person in lockdown. Well, hey, I'm Orion Kelly, that autistic guy. Since my diagnosis later in life, I have devoted my time to advocating for the autistic community with the goal of raising the level of understanding and acceptance of autistic people. So if that's something you'd be interested in, I'd be so happy to welcome you to this beautiful community of ours. By the way, thank you for those that have taken the time to subscribe to my channel, to watch the videos, to comment, to share, to rate. But if you haven't, I'd be so happy if you would consider subscribing to my YouTube channel by clicking that subscribe button and ringing the notifications bell. You will help me reach more people and raise a level of understanding and acceptance of autistic people right across the planet. In addition to my YouTube channel, you can find me on the socials. So if you'd like to reach out, say hey, join the conversation. I've got the Facebook page. Yep, so follow the Orion Kelly page on Facebook. You can hit me up on Instagram, do lots of tweets about the topic autism on Twitter. So find me on Twitter. And if you want to check out some, I guess, more lighthearted, fun, kind of autistic-y videos that I like to put on TikTok, well, you're welcome to check me out there. You can even go to my one-stop shop for all my content. Yep, you'll find the blogs, the podcasts, the YouTube videos. You can contact me and say, hey, details on me, all in the one place, my website, orionkelly.com.au, and check out the stuff. You know, honestly, it's kind of surreal that in the year 2021, we are still not only talking about, but actually living in the grips of a worldwide pandemic that started in 2019. COVID-19, coronavirus, whatever you want to call it, the worldwide pandemic continues to plague us. You know, as an autistic person, and this might be your experience or maybe it isn't, I still have moments where I don't believe this is real. Like the freedom to travel the world, the freedom to walk around, go to the shops whenever you wanted, not wear a mask, not have to check in with like a QR code to every single place you go to. Well, I mean, honestly, what's next? Every time I go to the toilet in my own house, do I have to check in? Because that'll be a lot of check-ins, trust me. The idea that we had these freedoms and now they're gone, and will they ever come back the way they used to be? I just really struggle with that as a reality. And as an Australian living in the great state of Victoria, we have been hit hard with, what would you call them? Would you call them outbreaks, clusters, hotspots? There's words for everything in this pandemic. It's ridiculous. PPE, as they say. Everything has a word. This is what I'm talking about. Okay, so as an autistic person with a neurological developmental disability, the challenges are at their most usually in things like social interaction, in communication, in routines, in sensory things. That's where they're important. And then the whole pandemic just changes the rules. The whole pandemic goes, okay, there's a new way of talking now, right? All the words have changed and you just need to know them. But as an autistic person, this has a big impact because I've spent my entire life trying to catch up on the words that are used for certain things. And that's the thing about humanity. So many words or so many phrases that in a literal sense or in the way that I would think about it logically have no relevance to how they're used, confuse you till your brain explodes and you have to basically accept this is how they're used, get to know how they're used, and then try and learn that language. As an autistic person, you basically have to learn another language to fit in to a neurotypical planet Earth. So when this happens, the pandemic starts, all these new words pop up. Have you noticed that? You got to go and get a swab. Make sure you have a mask on and make sure you scan the QR code and you check in. And I'm like, well, do you check out? The whole point of checking in is to check out, right? I mean, if you're not checking out, why are you checking in? That's the whole, I mean, you just see what I'm saying? I go to a hotel and I check in. Presumably I have to check out at some point. But anyway, so you don't need me to check out. You just need to know I was there. You don't need to know when I left, presumably, I don't know. It doesn't really matter either way, or maybe I'm doing it wrong. So as an autistic person, there's been real challenges. I mean, it's a challenge for everyone. And what's funny is neurotypical people are starting to complain that there's been this massive and sudden change of their routines, of their way of life. And it's making them feel horrible. And I'm thinking, oh yeah, welcome to my life. Every day, forever. When there are sudden changes in routine, in structure, in your day, in your life, it has a massive impact on autistic people. And again, it's hard for me to tell you why. Because of, I guess, the challenges we have with certain things like social interaction and sensory input and output, I guess we can kind of use routines and structure as a safe place, a safe zone, a bubble. Do you know what I mean? Like, they protect us. They give us things to hang our hat on so they can help us through the challenges. Potentially they can help us avoid things like meltdown and shutdown and more broadly autistic burnout. But what's really important to understand is that people have been going through this for a year or so and think it's just absolutely horrible. Right? How about if this was your life every day? When the pandemic ends, if it does and you can have your life back, we don't. As an autistic person, we don't get the change in routine and structure thing back. That will always happen in life. Some other really big things that have affected me as an autistic person, which I guess affect everyone in different ways, is, okay, so the first one, let's talk about the idea that when there are outbreaks or clusters and you go into what is called a lockdown. I'm not sure what it's referred to where you live, where you're watching this, but here in Australia, here in Victoria, when there's an outbreak in the state and they really need to lock down the community, in other words, tell everyone to stay at home, kind of stay at home orders until this kind of blows over. When there are lockdowns, there are specific rules. One of the lockdowns we went through went for over 100 days. Now, there are countries who have been significantly affected and impacted by COVID to an extent that Australia will never experience, in my view, in my opinion. So I see us as extremely lucky. But the idea that I've been through 5 lockdowns, some states have been through only a couple, potentially 1, 2, 3, 5 lockdowns, one of which went for over 100 days. I have insights into the way lockdowns can affect autistic people to probably a greater extent than a lot of other, well, at least Aussies. The first thing is the rules. Okay, so let's just go through a couple that obviously impact me. So you can only leave home. One of the reasons is to go and buy essential things. Okay, so for me as an autistic person, this is going to sound strange, but sometimes I need a break from whatever I'm doing. And I find what helps me is not only getting outdoors, outside, but also, and I can't explain you why, going into town, maybe buying a coffee and just wandering around the shops with my coffee. Maybe not buying anything, just going in and out of shops, wandering, meandering, having a coffee, maybe getting something to eat. This kind of non-essential shopping. When you do get to go to those shops, you may have this in your country, there can be a lot of panic buying. I'll never understand when, and because we've been in 5 lockdowns in Victoria, we can kind of look at other states and go, oh, rookies. Absolute rookies. What are they doing? There's like hundreds of people where there's a lockdown starting tonight. So every person in the entire city decides, I better go to the supermarket and buy 6,000 rolls of toilet paper and 5 bottles of tomato sauce and enough alcohol to start my own pub. If you need the alcohol, you can go to the shops every day. Don't go in one day and buy the entire section of toilet paper. What are you buying 4 packs for in the first place? Are you going to put it on the black market or the dark web? People are also very stressed, very anxious. They're all burnt out. They're all exhausted. And as an autistic person going into that environment, just think about it. From a sensory point of view, as an autistic person, how do you think the over-amplified sense of going into, say, a supermarket, a grocery store would be, if when you go in there, normally it's more of a kind of relaxed, slow pace. You get your trolley, you walk around, you grab the things you need. But in the pandemic, in the lockdown scenario, it's not. It's almost like it's a game show. And it's how quick can you get in, get around, buy everything on the shelf, pay for it, and get out before the buzzer runs out. So it's really stressful, high stress, high sensory input going in, right? And just, it creates levels of anxiety that sometimes I haven't even experienced before. And the idea too, this might not seem normal to you, but as an autistic person, I'm just giving you my own personal experience. It actually affects me at home. I actually get anxious. I actually get genuinely worried that the things that we need for our family from the supermarket won't be there. So before I even got to the supermarket, I'm already assuming they're not going to be there, or worried or anxious they're not going to be there. And you think, well, who cares? Everyone does. But as an autistic person, these are the kind of things that can build up. So even the luxury of being able to leave home can be so overwhelming that it's like, nah, stuff it. I'm not up for it. I'm not doing it. And lockdown, from my point of view, experiencing 5 of them, you might think, well, hang on, you're an autistic person. Don't you guys like being by yourself? Don't you like little to no interaction? Isn't it better to be in your own quiet, safe? I mean, I get it. And it's a joke a lot of autistic people use. It's like, hey, lockdown. I've been living lockdown since I was born. I get that. And that, yeah, cool, funny, kind of relatable. But in my life, it's not just about me. In my life, it's me, it's my wife, and my 2 kids. I've got a 7-year-old son who's autistic and a 2-year-old son. So a family of 4. When we're locked down, when my wife can't go to work or has to work from home, and the boys can't go to daycare or school and everyone's at home, not only are we locked down and we can't really go out, that changes the idea that, hey, I've been in lockdown all my life. Well, no, you've been spending time by yourself on your passions and special interests and avoiding interactions and stuff, but not with 3 or 4 other people in close confines 24/7. So that's where the joke becomes kind of irrelevant. It's not a real joke in my situation. In my situation, my ability when my kids go to school and my wife goes to work to do things like this, to work on content, to write blogs, do podcasts, these videos, create the kind of content that I'm passionate about, it's gone. Like, the reality is, if you have school-age kids, okay, well, you're spending more time with them, but you're basically a teacher. You're a glorified home teacher, right? You're giving them homeschooling, and you're juggling just the normal everyday relationships with kids, teaching them stuff, keeping them safe. They're all in each other's face. Everyone's getting a bit antsy. Yeah, the silver lining, is that a silver lining? To you, great. To me, it just affects me. It just sets off more of my autistic traits and makes it harder and harder to regulate myself, and pushes me into more meltdowns and more burnouts than I've ever experienced before. And the school thing, this is just an autistic perspective. I don't get it. Okay, so on one hand, you need a university degree, right, in teaching, and I don't know, what is it called? An education degree? I don't know what the degree is. It's learning, education, whatever you want to call it. You need a degree to be a teacher, right, for the most part? Okay. And that's because it's a hard job. That's because you need to learn things. You can't just decide, hey, I'm going to teach kids. No, you can't do that. There are things you need to learn. You are taught how to teach. Okay, so we've established that. We've said there are qualifications that must be met to become a teacher. We're going to a pandemic, and suddenly the powers that be are saying, well, the kids can learn from home. And how will they do that? Well, they can do some remote learning, but for the most part, just relying on the parents to teach them. Right? And you can say, no, that's not true. The teachers are teaching them. Well, no, they're not. No, they're not. The teachers can Zoom them or can send them little virtual things. But in the end, it's kind of like they're like the narrator of the story. But the parents are doing all the stuff. And I don't have a teacher's degree or an education degree or whatever it's called. I didn't go to uni and study how to be a teacher, nor did my wife. Most parents at home probably didn't either. It's the people who are qualified who aren't able to do their job, and the people doing their job instead are people who are completely unqualified. This is where the inconsistency really, and as an autistic person, this is the kind of stuff that really gets me, and it's inconsistencies. And as an autistic person, inconsistencies are big things. Consistency, structure, routine, logical ways of thinking, right? It's concrete, it's black and white, but still, it's a logical way of thinking. And I just find it troubling. Now, I have no idea how many times you've been forced to lock down, to stay at home during the pandemic in your neck of the woods. As I said, here in Victoria, we've had 5 lockdowns. So I guess you learn a bit as you go through them. I think, honestly, the first couple of lockdowns you don't learn much because you're thrust into such a completely alien concept. It's like, it's almost surreal. It's shock. You go through it and you still think it's some sort of dream, or your brain just can't come to grips with what's actually happening. So hang on. So I'm an adult with a family and a real job and a real life, and these people are telling me that I'm grounded. Go to your room. Don't come out. No dinner for you. You're staying in there. That's all I tell you, when to come out. It's like, it's seriously like being grounded. It's surreal. After the first couple, including one that was over 100 days, you start to realize, okay, you have to make this work for you. So number one, that's two. Number one priority is to take the advice and to keep yourself, your family, and the community safe. Okay, so that's obvious. The things that we've all been taught, that's fine. So that's clearly something you've got to do. But to make it work for you is also super important. Now, for example, there's a few essential things, right? Okay, now I know, and this is what I learned, I know that I do value getting outside, but not exercising, getting outside in the fresh air and doing little things and just kind of meandering around. I can't explain to you why, I just do. So, well, it's essential to go to the post office because I don't have a letterbox, right? My mail goes to a PO box, a box at a post office. That's essential to go and get my mail. So it's essential to go to the post office. That means I can go to the post office, pick up my mail, right? And that gets me out of the house. I could then go to a cafe, maybe buy a coffee. I could go to the bakery, maybe buy some bread. Right, I can do these essential things in a safe fashion, but if I make this, build this in, then I'm actually still getting what I need, just in a different way, in a refined way, rather than just a meandering. I can get these essential things done, but that it still allows, rather than going to one-stop shop, that still allows me to, I guess, live the life that's important to me. I learned you've got to work out what you require in your life that's critical or important to your family and your own mental health and your own well-being that you had pre the pandemic, and you've got to somehow find a way to build it in to the pandemic. And more specifically, because when you're not in lockdown, you have quite a lot of freedoms. More specifically, when you go into things like lockdown, how can you continue to do that? As an autistic person, like I've said so many times, structure, routine, and I guess expecting things to happen when I've planned them to happen are core and critical components of a good autistic life. Look, what I've learned from 5 lockdowns is, as an autistic person, if I want something, I'm going to have to pay for it in not a financial way. For example, if there are things that I really like to do on a daily basis that I know, whether it's part of my special interest or I know it's something that I need to do or it helps me as an autistic person, but I can't do them when I plan to do them or usually do them because of lockdown, I have to know, I have to acknowledge and understand that in order to do those things, they can be achieved, but I have to change when I can do them. And that might be when the kids are sleeping at nighttime, that might be getting up earlier in the morning. It doesn't matter when they're napping, it doesn't matter when it is, but find a time you know works and make that your planned time. Okay, so it is being flexible, but then it's also creating some sort of structure and routine. Okay, well, I'm going to achieve these things, but at a different time, but let's pick a time that works and let's stick to that. Then you've just moved basically when you do something to a different time that works in lockdown. Another thing that I've picked up, it's not only okay, but it's critical that you acknowledge when you need support, when you need assistance, when you need help. Because as an autistic person, it doesn't matter your support needs or care needs, regardless, just being diagnosed as an autistic person means, to some degree, you have daily support needs. That's just a fact. You might have lower care needs or higher care needs than another autistic person, but regardless of who you are, to some degree, you will have daily support needs. Therefore, when you're in lockdown, when you're in a pandemic, things can seem a lot worse than they really are. Because there's the tiresome exhaustion of all the rules and regulations and the closing in of a lifestyle. But what's important is to just feel like, okay, I need some assistance, I need some support, I need some help. I may not have needed this pre-pandemic in these circumstances, but the pandemic has completely changed my life in ways I could never have imagined. Now I actually need support for me. The point I've learned through this lockdown number 5 is that, you know what, no matter what I do, I'm fully vaccinated. We've followed all the rules and regulations. We've kept ourselves completely within our little bubble. I think no matter what, I've realized that this just is what it is, and it probably won't ever go away. It may evolve and change, but I guess I've had a sense of realization. For people that have only gone through 1 or 2 or maybe no lockdowns, there might still be a surreal sense of what is this? And people still have this bizarre idea that we'll get through it and then it'll go back to normal life, pre-COVID life. In my opinion, there is no such thing. If you think that we're going back to pre-COVID life, you are badly mistaken. Now, as an autistic guy, an autistic dad with an autistic son, and a family of 4, I found that through the pandemic, it's important to create normality, routine, traditions, activities, things that keep your family together, things that keep your family sane, things that keep your family healthy and happy. Now, obviously, if you have a really big backyard or a really big property, that's pretty easy, right? Just get your family outside and get them out and about in the fresh air, or get them moving. And it can be tricky if you live in an apartment, or you live in a building with no access, or you have a really small yard. It can be a little bit more tricky. So I think from my point of view, and I can't really give you advice for every single person, but I think if you can find ways, whether you have a family or you're by yourself, or you care for an autistic person, if you can find ways to create new routines, new traditions, new activities that fit within a lockdown or just day-to-day pandemic conditions, it's worth the pushback initially of changes, because it will become a routine. It will become a structure. It will become a dependable way to regulate and to maintain good mental health and well-being. So for me and my family, it's tricky, right? Because life is a whirlwind. When you've got an autistic husband, autistic kid, my wife, our family, it's a whirlwind. If we can somehow try to build in structure, which is hard, it helps. We know it helps. So in lockdown, you can't really go anywhere. Okay, but you can do activities like today. We're going to go and do some gardening. I guess the point is, if your entire life has just been blown up and shattered into a million pieces, and you can somehow put some of the pieces back together and create some sort of normality, it can only be beneficial for you and your family. And from my point of view, as an autistic person, I still struggle on a daily basis with the COVID pandemic. It's taken a lot of things away from me that I really love, and even the idea of things that I can do that I really love that I can't do. And the lockdowns are hard. The changing is hard. I don't like the idea that I feel like I might get in trouble if I go to the shops, or I can't leave the house, right? It's a feeling that I find very hard to process. So I guess the best advice I can give is try to just unburden yourself of the idea that you can control this. This is all just gonna go away and go back to normal. Try and unburden yourself of all those expectations. It really is a classic case of the who moved my cheese, right? You keep going to the same place and there's cheese every day. Then one day you go there and the cheese is gone. And you just keep going back to that same place, expecting the cheese to come back, never comes back, and you just die of starvation. Or you go to the place where the cheese is, one day it's gone. You decide, okay, I'm gonna go looking for cheese somewhere else, right? And you find cheese somewhere else, potentially more, better cheese, and you live life to a better level of excitement and peace and enjoyment and happiness, right? It's classic who moved my cheese, this whole scenario. This is the pandemic, this is what it is. Life won't be the same. You can keep going back to find that cheese that's disappeared and it's never coming back and you'll die, or go and find some new cheese, right? Make it work for you. Oh, I like books. And don't get me started on The Richest Man in Babylon, I'm telling you. I feel like putting myself in lockdown after making this video on lockdown. Maybe I will. In the meantime, you should check out more of my videos. You might want to know what it's like to be an autistic person, get that vibe. Well, good, check them out. Please take the time, if you haven't already, to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Just click that subscribe button and hang in there for more videos in the meantime. Thank you so much for watching. Talk soon.